He had expected a woman in mourning black, hymnal in hand, and instead a person in trousers, swung down off the noon coach at Poplar Bend, and looked him dead in the eye. Hiram Fenwick stood at the depot rail, with his good hat crushed in both fists, and no idea what to say. The letter in his coat had promised a preacher's widow, gentle and grieving, a settled sort of woman who would keep his house and mend his fences of silence. The person in front of him wore a man's canvas coat, a flat-brimmed hat, and a deck of cards riding in a leather sleeve at the hip. "You'd be Fenwick," she said. It was not a question. "I'm Roxana Pruitt. I answered your advertisement." He worked his jaw. The advertisement asked for a widow of the cloth. It asked for a woman who could read scripture, keep accounts, and not flinch at hard weather. She hitched a worn carpetbag higher on her shoulder. "I can do all three, and I can tell an honest man from a liar across a card table, which the widow of the cloth likely could not." She tilted her head. "You're an honest man, Mr. Fenwick. It's plain as a barn door. That's the only reason I got off the coach." Hiram had rehearsed a great many things in the weeks of waiting, and none of them fit this moment. He had rehearsed being kind to a fragile woman. He had not rehearsed being seen straight through by one in trousers who smelled faintly of coach dust and pipe smoke, and something sweeter under it, like clover. "There's been a mistake," he said. "There has," Roxana agreed, "but not the one you think." She looked past him at the flat brown land, the poplars bent all one direction by the wind, the little town that was hardly more than a church, a store, and a livery. Then she looked back. "You going to make me sleep in the livery, or are you going to feed a body first and argue after?" Against every intention, Hiram fed her first. She sat at his plain table and ate his plain stew, and did not once complain of it, and while she ate, she counted his account book upside down across the table and told him he'd been shorted $11 by the feedman at Cutbank. She was right. He checked it twice that night by lamplight, and she was right to the penny. Roxana watched the homesteader move about his own kitchen like a man in a borrowed coat, careful of everything, at ease with nothing. There was a woman's Bible on the shelf with a woman's name pressed into the leather, and a woman's shawl still folded on the peg by the door, and Roxana understood the shape of the house without being told. He had loved someone. She had died. And he had gone looking through the newspaper columns for a quiet, mournful stranger, because a mournful stranger would not ask him to feel anything he was not ready to feel. "You put in that advertisement," she said, "because you wanted somebody who'd already done her grieving elsewhere, and wouldn't trouble you with wanting to be happy." Hiram set down the lamp very carefully. "You've a hard way of talking. I've a true way of talking. There's a difference, and folks who can't tell them apart usually deserve the confusion." She pushed the account book back toward him. "I'll not stay where I'm not wanted, Mr. Fenwick. I've slept in worse places than a livery, and I'll sleep in worse yet. But I'll not be lied to, and I'll not have you lie to yourself in front of me. It's tiresome to watch." He looked at her a long moment. The wind pushed at the window glass. "You truly play cards for your living?" "I truly do. Riverboats, mining camps, once a governor's parlor." A corner of her mouth turned up. "I never cheat. That's the joke of it. I don't have to. Men see the trousers and the deck, and they decide I must be crooked, and they play stupid trying to catch me, and they lose honest and blame the devil." The smile went soft at the edges, unexpectedly. "It is a lonesome way to make $1. I'm 31 years old, and I have wanted, for about 2 of those years, to stop moving. So I read a homesteader's advertisement in a paper somebody left on a bar, and I thought, there is a man asking for exactly the wrong thing. Maybe he doesn't know what he's asking for. Maybe I'll go find out." Hiram Fenwick, who had not laughed since the winter his wife died, felt something move in his chest that was dangerously near to it. He gave her the good bed and slept in the barn, and in the morning she was up before him, and she had found the leak in the tack room roof he'd been meaning to fix for a year, and she was on the roof herself in her trousers with his hammer, and she did not fall. The days went strangely after that, and then they went easily, and Hiram was slow to notice the difference between the two. She kept his books, and caught the store owner shorting his flour, and the banker fudging his interest, and she did it all with a flat, cheerful certainty that made grown men take off their hats and apologize. The whole of Poplar Bend did not know what to make of her. The church ladies pursed their lips. The preacher, a nervous young man named Ellery, came out to the homestead to inquire, gently, whether Miss Pruitt intended to reform. Reform from what? Roxana asked him, pouring his coffee. I don't drink, I don't lie. I pay my debts the same day I owe them, and I have put $11 back in this good man's pocket and 30 more besides. Which of the commandments would you like me to start keeping first, Reverend, so I can be sure I've got room in my schedule? The young preacher drank his coffee and went home thoughtful and, to his credit, kinder. The trouble came on a Saturday, the way trouble usually did, riding in on a fine horse with a fine coat and a smile like a split seam. His name was Del Marchbanks, and he had played cards against Roxana on a riverboat 2 seasons back and lost a month's wages and never forgiven her for it. He found her in the general store buying nails, and he made sure the whole store heard him. Well, if it isn't the trouser queen of the Mississippi, Marchbanks drawled, loud. Boys, you know you've got a professional sharp living out at the Fenwick place. Fleeced me clean in Memphis. Fleeced a bishop in Natchez. Whatever that homesteader thinks he married a... He did not finish the word. Hiram Fenwick had come in from the wagon behind him, and Hiram was not a large man nor a loud one, but he set his hand flat on the counter and said, in a voice gone very quiet and very level, "You'll say the rest of that to me, and you'll say it outside, and you'll say it once." The store went still. Marchbanks turned, sizing him up, and found nothing to laugh at in the homesteader's plain, steady face. Roxana stepped between them before it could go further, and she did it not out of fear, but out of a cold, practiced calm. "Del," she said pleasantly, "you lost to me fair in Memphis and you know it, and the reason it still stings is that you cheated, and I caught you, and I still beat you honest. Now you've a choice. You can apologize to this store for your language and ride on. Or you can sit down at that table by the window and let me take the rest of your month in front of witnesses. I don't cheat. I never had to. You're living proof." The color came up in Marchbanks's neck. Pride made the choice for him, the way it always did with his kind. He sat. It took her 11 minutes. Hiram stood at her shoulder the whole time and never said a word, and the town watched a man who had called his wife a filthy name lose every dollar in his pockets to a woman playing a clean, patient, merciless game. When it was done, she did not take the money. She slid it back across the table and said, "Keep it. Buy yourself a Bible and a better manner. I've got more than I need," and she rose and took Hiram's arm and walked out into the sun. And behind her, the whole store of Poplar Bend, who had not known quite what to make of her for a month, decided all at once and firmly that they liked her very much. Hiram did not let go of her arm until they reached the wagon. "You didn't have to give it back," he said. "No," she said, "but you stepped in front of a man twice your reach, for the sake of my name, and I'll not have the day remembered for money. I'll have it remembered for that." She looked up at him, and for once, the sharpness was all gone out of her face. "Nobody's ever stood between me and a hard word before, Hiram. In 31 years, not once." Hiram watched all of it from the edges, the way he watched everything, and the watching turned slowly into something warmer. He noticed the way she squinted at the horizon of a morning, reading weather the way she read a card table. He noticed she sang under her breath when she thought no one heard, old river songs, low and true. He noticed that she never once touched his wife's Bible or his wife's shawl, that she left the whole grieving shape of the house exactly where it was, and that somehow, by leaving it, she had made room in it. "You could stay," he said one evening, and then colored to the ears, because it had come out of him before he'd decided to say it. They were on the porch. The poplars hissed. "I mean to say, the arrangement. You could... It needn't be temporary." Roxana was quiet a moment. "Are you asking me to keep your books, Mr. Fenwick, or asking me something else?" "I don't rightly know how to ask the something else," he admitted. "I'm out of practice. I was out of practice before I ever started." "Then I'll make it easy." She turned in her chair to face him full on, the way she'd faced him at the depot, nothing hidden. I have been looked at by a great many men in a great many rooms, and every one of them was looking at the trousers or the cards or the trouble. You are the first man in years who looked at me and saw a person he'd be sorry to see get back on the coach. Don't argue. I watched your face this whole month. I read faces for a living. You're an open book, and it is the best book I've read. Hiram swallowed. I'm a plain man. Dull, my wife used to say. God rest her, and she loved me anyhow. You're not dull, you're steady. There's a whole world of difference, and only a fool can't tell them apart. Roxana reached across the space between the chairs and laid her hand over his, over the rough knuckles and the old rope scars, and left it there. I'll stay, on one condition. Name it. You marry me proper, in that little church, in front of the pursed lips and the whole town, so nobody can ever whisper I stole a widower, or that you took in a card sharp for cheap labor. I've had my name in enough dirty mouths. I'd like it said clean, once, in a clean place. Her voice did not shake, but her hand tightened. I'd like to belong somewhere out loud. Yes, Hiram said, and this time there was no rehearsing and no hesitation in it at all. Yes, out loud, in front of God and the feedman and everybody. They were married 3 Sundays later by the young preacher, who had gotten kinder and preached a fair sermon on judging by appearances that made 2 of the church ladies weep, and one of them apologized to Roxana in the churchyard after. Roxana wore a dress for the first time in 9 years, a plain gray wool with a bit of white at the collar, and Hiram thought his heart would come clean out of him. She kept the trousers folded in the bottom drawer. She said a body ought to hold on to who she'd been while she learned who she was becoming, and Hiram, who still could not walk past the peg with the folded shawl without a soft ache, understood exactly. The homestead at Poplar Bend prospered under the 2 of them, the way it never had under one. She caught every man who tried to short him, and befriended most of them afterward, and by the 2nd year the feedman at Cutbank would not deal with anyone but Mrs. Fenwick, and said so proudly. She taught the preacher's wife to keep accounts. She taught the Sunday children a card trick or 2, harmlessly, to their mother's scandal and delight. And on winter evenings, she sat across the plain table from her plain, steady husband, and dealt out a hand of 2, and they played for kindling and kisses, and never once for money, and Hiram lost cheerfully every time, and knew he had never in his life won so much. Years on, a drummer passing through the store asked old Hiram Fenwick how a quiet homesteader had come to marry the sharpest card player in 3 territories. Hiram thought about it while he loaded his wagon, the way he thought about everything, slow and sure. I advertised for a preacher's widow, he said at last. A gentle, grieving woman who'd keep my house and never trouble me to feel anything. He looked out the store window to where Roxana stood in the road, laughing with the preacher's wife, her head thrown back, alive in the plain daylight. God saw fit to send me the opposite of every word I wrote, and there has not been a single day since that I wasn't grateful he can't read my handwriting. He tipped his hat to his wife across the road. She caught it, the small gesture, the way she caught everything, and lifted her hand to him, and the poplars bent all one direction in the wind, and the homesteader who had asked for the wrong thing went home to the right one.